everybody, I'm East Coast Pete. This is my show for drummers only. And today we're going to talk about Mick Fleetwood. He was born in 1947 and co-founder and drummer for Fleetwood Mac. In all of its many lineups, Mick Fleetwood plus John McVie, that's how they got the name Fleetwood Mac. Born and raised in southwest England in Cornwall, he also spent some of his early years in Egypt and Norway. His dad was in the Royal Air Force. At age 15, he left home to pursue a music career since academics were not going well. Nonetheless, when he matured, he had impeccable manners and the vocabulary of a nobleman. He is tall and thin, quiet and wise, and a natural musician. His parents encouraged his drumming. They got him a drum kit when he was 13. Mick liked the drumming of Tony Meehan, Cliff Richard's drummer, with the Shadows. In London, staying at his sister's flat, he was practicing, was noticed by Peter Bardens, who lived close by, and Barden had a band called the Shanes, and he provided the opportunity to play a gig. The Shanes supported early shows by the Rolling Stones and the Yardbirds. Mick replaced Nigel Hutchinson in the Bow Street Runners and appeared on Ready, Steady, Go on the Beeb. Mitch joined Pete Bardens in his new project, Shotgun Express, fronted by Rod Stewart. Peter Green was in the band till he left to join John Mayall's Blues Breakers in 1967. Mick also joined and met John McVie, who was Mayall's bassist at that time. And Bardens went on to join the prog band Camel. Mick felt he met Jenny Boyd, Patty Boyd's sister. Patty would be married to George Harrison and later to Eric Clapton. Mayall fired Mick due to his drinking during gigs. McVie was his drinking buddy. Green also left the Blues Breakers. He felt stifled. Green remembered his favorite rhythm section, Fleetwood Mac. And then Green, McVie, and Fleetwood joined forces in the new blues band. And Jeremy Spencer was brought in on slide guitar, and this was Fleetwood Mac 1. And their first album was called Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac and was released in 1968. Blues covers and originals by Green and Spencer. And here's the songs. 1. My Heartbeat Like a Hammer, written by Spencer. 2. Merry-Go-Round, written by Green. 3. Long Gray Mare, also written by Green. 4. Hellhound on My Trail, written by Robert Johnson. 5. Shake Your Moneymaker, written by Elmore James. And 6. Looking for Somebody, another Green song. No Place to Go by Howlin' Wolf. My Baby's Been Good to Me by Spencer Davis. I Loved Another Woman by Green, and Cold Black Night by Spencer. The World Keep on Turnin' by Green, and You Got to Move by Elmore James, also done by the Rolling Stones. Fleetwood Mac was an overnight success. as Teabag Blues, as it was called, was in vogue thanks to Alexis Corner, John Mayall, and Brian Jones. FM's second album was Mr. Wonderful. Christine Perfect from fellow blues enthusiasts Chicken Shack. See if I can turn the page here, guys. Alright. Played keyboards as a featured artist, and the album was released in the US as English Rose with a different set list. Many of the songs began with Jeremy Spencer doing the Elmore James guitar riff. The album was recorded live in the studio and sounded murky at best. Fleetwood was well known as that tall, skinny guy who stares. Next album, Then Play On, with Danny Kerwin, a young guitar phenom who joined Green and Spencer on guitar. Christine Perfect married John McVie, and it would be Green's last album with Fleetwood Mac. Spencer was upset with Kerwin and refused to contribute to the album. Green wanted to sway Fleetwood Mac away from pure blues, correctly forecasting the post-Flower Power folk movement. The album was well received, and the recording was improved using editing and overdubs. Green was improvising on guitar, and Fleetwood Mac now resembled a jam band. Oh Well was released as a single. The US version had Rattlesnake Shake as the single, but it didn't chart. Oh Well did much better. It became an extended jam song at shows. Peter Green's last single was The Green Monalishi in 1970. It was backed by World in Harmony. It went to number 10 in the UK, and Green was an acid casualty. He lived, but his new song was about a green demon dog, and it freaked him out. Freaks me out a little bit too. Danny Kerwin nursed his idol Green through a night-long recording session. The guitar shrieked like banshees, and after some needed convalescence, Green liked the song. The single went to number 1, but Green had had enough. He left Kerwin and the band in the lurch. Fleetwood Mac now was a light pop band with the possibility of turning into a hard rock band at will. The Kilnhouse album was nearly as far away from Peter Green's blues as possible. It wasn't because they were pissed at Green for leaving, but with Jeremy Spencer's lack of contribution, the band morphed into Fleetwood Mac 2, and Spencer would leave, and Bob Welsh replaced him. Kilnhouse only went to number 69, and fans were scratching their heads. Future Games was a great, great album, top to bottom. Christine was now a full member. Her vocals were gorgeous, and Welsh, an American, was versed in R&B and jazz, and he also wrote lyrics. Kerwin and Welsh were wonderful together. Kerwin's vocals and writing had matured as he was at his peak. Melodic pop was on the menu, and Mick Fleetwood's drumming became world class. Sands of Time was an unsuccessful single, but the early 70s were now album-oriented rock, and FM got regular play on FM radio. Kerwin's Woman of 1,000 Years is timeless, stoic and otherworldly, light and pleasing. Welsh's Future Game song fit into the band's new format, and Christine's Show Me a Smile was a hint of what was to come. But all was not well in Fleetwood Macville. John McVie made Danny his new drinking mate. It wasn't a friendly time. McVie was a brooder, and Kerwin was a workaholic, and alcohol fed his bonfire. Kerwin was not well mentally. He missed Peter Green, who had been Fleetwood Mac's de facto leader. The tour to support the next album, Bare Trees, was excruciating, especially in the United States. Danny Kerwin just wasn't cut out to party like Keith Moon. His songs on the album, especially Dust, were incredible, but Danny was ready to explode. During the Bare Trees tour, he was fired. One might say that Fleetwood Mac would now morph into Phase 3 with Kerwin gone. Bob Weston and Dave Walker were recruited. The album Penguin charted in the US, and the tour went well. 5 singles were released but didn't chart. The album went to number 50. The band decided that Walker's vocals weren't working, so he left. The next album, Mystery to Me, also released in '73, was Bob Welsh's album. It was meant as radio-friendly pop rock. Again, there were no hit singles. Welsh's song Hypnotized was included on radio playlists for many years. Mystery to Me saw Weston leave, and sales would pick up in later years when Fleetwood Mac 4 was so well received. But before that, Bob and the band put out Heroes Are Hard to Find, recorded in the US and first to enter the top 40 US charts. Again, no singles, but Welsh's Bermuda Triangle joined Hypnotized on the radio as dark, magical songs. Heroes may have been hard to find, but singer-songwriters were apparently waiting in the wings. As Fleetwood heard portions of Buckingham Nicks, the album, and he sought Lindsey Buckingham to be the new guitarist for Fleetwood Mac, but Lindsey would only agree if Stevie Nicks was also brought in. Talk about an explosion. 1975 saw Fleetwood Mac's popularity skyrocket. The album was number 1 and stayed there for a year. It was the second biggest album in sales to Peter Frampton's Comes Alive, and had 3 top singles, Over My Head, Rhiannon, and Say You Love Me. The album was 7 times platinum, selling 7 million in the US. The UK was slow to get on the train. They still had the green Manalishi taste in their mouths. The sleeve art featured a classy Mick Fleetwood in a formal suit facing a stunned John McVie kneeling by a doorway as Mick sipped cordial and supported himself in the doorway with a long cane. It was known as the White Album. The Fleetwood Mac logo was deco. However, whatever happened to the Kiln House look? And California was now home And Fleetwood Mac 4 was actually Fleetwood Mac's 10th lineup, but this was their most successful, best known lineup. With all the fuss over Fleetwood Mac's new soft rock image, no one could have predicted the unequaled success of their next album, Rumors. Released in 1977, produced by Ken Caillet and Richard Dashett. Recorded mostly in California, it would outdo the popularity of the last album. The studio sessions were full of strife as Stevie had broken up with Lindsay. Christine and John were feuding, and Mick was separated from his own wife back in England. Stevie and Mick began an affair, but this idea was quashed when they realized that the band would probably break up if they continued. But Mick loved her, and so did Lindsay. The romantic overtones and heartaches were impossible to hide and filtered into the recording of Rumors. It was palpable, and fans ate it up. Rumors would be Fleetwood Mac's bestseller. Years of successful tours made them international stars and continued to emotionally wring the band dry. And cocaine was the fuel, and the world was treated to rock music's version of a riveting soap opera. But at this point, I refer you all to my show on Stevie Nicks for more info. Also, see my show on Danny Kerwin. None of this is news, but it's still vital. And the music continues even today, 40 years later. Well, that's it for me for today for Mick Fleetwood. I'd like to point out before I go that his drumming was impeccable. Seen him at least 2 times, possibly 3. I saw him do his solo with that talking drum. That was pretty cool, Mick. Yeah, Mick Fleetwood's a big hero of mine. He made Fleetwood Mac happen on so many levels. You just love watching him play with the expressions on his face. Looks a little cadaverous sometimes, but that's just me, thinking thin guy with a gaunt face, playing drums with his mouth hanging wide open. It's a little strange, and it's not something I never did. Thank you for being with me on For Drummers Only, and I'll see you all next time. Take good care. Bye-bye.